Okay, flashbacks in therapy sessions. This section is for survivors who are in therapy or contemplating starting it. Over the years, I have noticed that as survivors feel safe enough with me, opportunities arise more frequently for working with flashbacks during sessions. Sometimes it even seems that some part of them schedules their flashbacks to occur just prior to or during our session. It's as if they're looking for on-the-job training. In flashback management, some therapists describe this as regression in the service of building the healthy ego. I recently experienced this with a client who rushed into my office 5 minutes late, visibly flushed and anxious. I've definitely read this before. Whether or not I've read this in a vlog before, I'm not sure, but it doesn't hurt to re-drill information. So she opened the session by exclaiming, "I'm such a loser. I can't do anything right. You must be sick of working with me." This was someone who had on previous occasions been moved by my validation of her ongoing accomplishments in our work. Based on what she had uncovered about her mother's punitive perfectionism in previous sessions, I was certain that being late had triggered her into an emotional flashback. In this moment, she was experiencing right brain emotional dominance and a decrease in left brain rational thinking, as so often happens in a flashback. She temporarily lost access to the post-childhood knowledge and understanding. This appears to be a mechanism of dissociation, and in this instance, it rendered my client amnesic of my high regard for our work together. I believe this type of dissociation also accounts for the recurring disappearance of previously established trust that commonly occurs with emotional flashbacks. As we progress in our recovery, we learn that flashbacks can cause us to forget that our proven allies are in fact still reliable. With enough practice, however, we can learn to interpret feelings of distrust with proven friends as evidence that we are in a flashback. We are flashing back to our childhoods when no one was trustworthy. Oh, dude. And then we go on to one that I'm pretty sure I've read out, which is grieving resolves emotional flashbacks, step 9, which, yeah, I have really found that to be the case. It's like you have to do a lot of stuff to be able to get past the barriers to grieving, because protectively, there's a lot of shit that, like, I have to be orientated to this time period, to the present, and understand that I'm flashing back to a time in the past to be able to apply the feelings in the right place, to understand what I'm grieving, and to allow room for that kind of level of grief without judging myself for having a inappropriately intense emotional reaction to something in the current moment. There's a lot of parts have to be able to be together in a compassionate, non-judgmental way. Like, I think there's a lot of barriers to being able to grieve, but I think once you work those out, this is right, grieving resolves flashbacks. This seems to be what happens, like, the process we've been describing, where we're like, sometimes we go through a flashback, but it's like healing, and it becomes like this embodied experience that happens now. Like, we pull the part of us flashing back into the present with us now, instead of getting pulled back into the flashback. And it seems to be like we can process trauma with one kind of them, or we can get re-traumatized if we get overwhelmed, I guess, while having them, and aren't able to let the grief pass through us, because it becomes a question of feeling too unsafe to feel the emotional response of grief. Okay, this is making sense. This is making sense.